My name is Emily Rogers. I'm 31 years old, and I live in Dallas, Texas. By trade, I'm an operations manager, the type who color codes spreadsheets and triple checks every number. Some might call me too responsible. I always thought responsibility would earn respect. But in my family, it earned me chains. Because while my sister was treated like royalty, my parents called me their servant. And the cruelest part? They meant it. They said it to my face. What they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the CEO they feared most had already handed me the title that would one day make them bow their heads. If you're watching, please like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Has your family ever underestimated you or treated you like less? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'd love to hear your story. It was supposed to be an ordinary Saturday. Mom had invited me over to help set up for Claire's birthday dinner, my younger sister. The golden child, the one who always got the bigger slice of cake. The louder applause, the softer landings. When I walked into the kitchen, the smell of garlic bread and tomato sauce filled the air. Mom was stirring pasta, Dad was pouring wine, and Claire, she was perched on the counter in a designer dress she'd never worked a day to afford. Mom said without turning. Grab the plates and set the table, will you? Of course, always me. Always the helper. I swallowed hard and forced a smile. Sure. I laid out the plates while Claire scrolled on her phone, laughing at something shallow and stupid. When I was done, she glanced up and smirked. You set them crooked, Em. Honestly, you'd think after 30 years of being the family maid, you'd be better at it. The room went still. Dad chuckled, not kindly but knowingly. She's right, Emily. You've always been the responsible one. The servant heart, I froze. The servant? Mom didn't look up from the pot. Oh, don't take it so seriously. You know we can always count on you. Every family needs someone who knows their place. Their place. The words hit like acid on my skin. My heart pounded in my chest, hot shame rising in my throat. I whispered, I'm not your servant. Claire smirked wider. Then stop acting like one. The three of them laughed together. It was a sound I'd grown up hearing, shared at my expense, as if humiliating me was some private family joke. My hands trembled on the back of a chair, my knuckles white. For the first time, I didn't just feel invisible. I felt owned by the people who were supposed to love me most. That night, I drove home in silence, headlights blurring through tears. I sat in my driveway for hours, staring at the house I had bought on my own, with no help from them. Their words replayed again and again. Servant, knows her place. But deep beneath the shame, something else stirred. Because while they sat in that kitchen mocking me, they had no idea what was coming. They had no idea the servant they dismissed was about to become the boss they feared. And when the day came that I stood tall beside the CEO they whispered about, hearing him call me boss in front of everyone, their laughter died in their throats. People think betrayal comes out of nowhere, like a sudden lightning strike splitting the sky. But in my family, it wasn't lightning. It was erosion. A slow, steady chipping away of who I was until nothing remained but obligation. I grew up in a modest ranch-style home in Dallas. Nothing extravagant. Dad's steady accountant paycheck covered the bills. Mom kept the house running, and Claire and I shared a bedroom until I was 12. From the outside, we looked like a typical middle-class family. Church on Sundays, backyard barbecues in the summer. Christmas lights strung so bright you could see them from 3 streets over. But inside those walls, some rules weren't written down. Claire was the princess. I was the worker bee. Claire was 2 years younger but worlds apart in how she was treated. If she left her clothes scattered across the room, Mom chuckled. She's creative. Messy minds are brilliant minds. If I left a sock out of place, Emily, you know better. Pick up after yourself. When Claire spilled juice on the carpet, Dad grabbed paper towels with a laugh. Accidents happen. When I accidentally knocked over a vase, his voice turned sharp. Emily, why can't you be more careful? Every mistake Claire made was forgiven, excused, softened. Every mistake I made was magnified, framed as a flaw. Our family had a ritual. Sunday dinners at Grandma's. Everyone gathered around the table, passing bowls of mashed potatoes and cornbread. Claire would sit pretty at the table while I was sent to help in the kitchen. Grandma noticed. She'd squeeze my hand as I carried plates. "Don't let them wear you down, baby. You shine brighter than they see." Her words kept me going. But when she passed away my junior year of high during H school, that protective voice was gone. And the imbalance got worse. In high school, I pushed myself hard. Honors classes, debate team, part-time job at the library. I brought home straight A's, beaming with pride. Dad nodded. "Good. That's what we expect from you." 2 years later, Claire came home with a B- in math. Mom hugged her tightly. "We're proud of you for trying. Not everyone has Emily's head for numbers. It wasn't just grades. It was everything." When Claire got the lead in the school play, they filled the front row, flowers in hand. When I won a debate trophy, they said, "That's nice, Em," and asked me to set the table. By college, the roles were cemented. I paid for my tuition with scholarships and 2 part-time jobs. Claire? My parents drained their savings accounts to fund her art degree out of state. When I questioned it, Dad waved me off. "Emily, you're self-sufficient. Claire needs more help." Self-sufficient. Responsible. The words they used like praise but wheel, dead like shackles. I worked harder, longer, steadier, and slowly, without realizing it, I began believing the role they'd written for me, the one who served. Looking back, I should have recognized the bitterness simmering under my skin. The way I clenched my jaw when Claire called me from her dorm, bragging about her new friends. While I scraped tips from waitressing. The way Mom's sighs grew heavier when I asked for anything, time, attention, acknowledgement. The way Dad's approval only came when I was solving problems for someone else. They weren't just ignoring me. They were molding me, training me to accept less, to give more, to serve without question. Still, there were moments of rebellion. At 26, I bought my first house. Small, nothing glamorous, but mine. I signed the mortgage papers alone without their help. And when I put the keys in the lock for the first time, I thought, this will prove I'm more than their servant. When I invited them over, I expected pride. Instead, Mom glanced around the living room and said, "It's practical. But don't you think it's a lot for one person?" Claire smirked. "Maybe you're just holding it until I need it." Dad chuckled like it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. My stomach churned, but I forced a smile. Because back then, I still believed I could earn their respect. But respect never came. And as the years passed, the cracks in our family dynamic didn't heal. They widened, until the day my parents looked me in the eye and said the word that finally shattered me: servant. It didn't happen all at once. The word servant slipped into our family conversations like poison into water, slow at first, then impossible to ignore. One afternoon, Mom called while I was at work. "Em, can you pick up the groceries for Sunday dinner? You know what Claire likes? Organic strawberries, oat milk, that sourdough bread from the market." I pinched the bridge of my nose. "Mom, I've got deadlines. Can't Claire pick up her own things?" Her voice hardened. "Emily, don't be difficult. Claire has a lot on her plate with her art projects. You've always been the dependable one." Dependable. That word again. The nice mask they put on what they really meant, servant. The next weekend, we had a family barbecue in Dad's backyard. Claire lounged in a lawn chair, scrolling her phone, while I flipped burgers at the grill. Dad strolled over, beer in hand. "See, Emily? You're a natural. Every family needs someone who takes care of the real work." Claire laughed without looking up. "Yeah, every queen needs a servant." Her words stung sharper than the heat from the grill. I forced a smile, swallowing hard. "I'm not your servant, Claire." She finally looked up, a smirk curling. Could have fooled me. It even started leaking into my professional life. One day, Claire came to my office downtown, uninvited, demanding help with her portfolio. My co-workers watched as she dropped a pile of papers on my desk. "Emily will do it," she told them, voice dripping with entitlement. "She's basically my assistant." I wanted to sink into the floor. The way my colleagues looked at me, half amused, half pitying, burned me alive. I pulled her aside, whispering fiercely, "Don't ever call me that in front of my team again." She just shrugged. "What? I'm only saying what Mom and Dad always say." It was at Mom's birthday dinner when things really started to boil. I'd spent hours decorating, baking her favorite lemon cake, and organizing the whole evening. Claire showed up late, empty-handed, and still somehow managed to be the center of attention. When it came time to cut the cake, Dad handed me the knife. "Emily, you serve everyone." "You're good at that," Claire snorted. "Of course she is. She's been our servant forever." The table erupted in laughter. Everyone except me. My hands trembled as I sliced the cake, each cut feeling like it was carving pieces out of me. After dinner, I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles went white. Their voices replayed in my head like a cruel chorus. Servant, servant, servant. The thing about being called something over and over is that it starts to seep into your skin, sink into your bones. You start questioning if maybe it's true. Maybe that's all you are. But a flicker of anger was beginning to burn beneath the shame. A week later, I overheard Mom on the phone with Claire while I was helping clean the house. "She'll never leave," Mom said casually, not realizing I was in earshot. "Emily knows her place. She's reliable. She'll always do what we ask." I froze in the hallway, the duster limp in my hand. Claire laughed on the other end. "Yeah, she's too scared to ever stand up for herself." My chest tightened. Too scared. That was how they saw me. That was how they'd written me into their story. And for the first time, I realized something terrifying. They weren't just calling me their servant. They believed it. And if I didn't fight back soon, I might start believing it too. The night it all came crashing down wasn't some dramatic holiday or milestone. It was supposed to be an ordinary family dinner. But in my house, ordinary always carried the weight of something cruel waiting to happen. Mom had invited a few extended relatives over, an aunt, 2 cousins, even a family friend from church. I hadn't expected much. Just another evening of cooking, cleaning, and being invisible while Claire basked in the spotlight. I arrived early, carrying the casserole I'd made. Mom didn't even thank me, just pointed toward the kitchen. "Emily, set the table. And don't forget the wine glasses this time." Claire sauntered in an hour later, empty-handed but glowing in her new dress. Dad rushed to greet her like she was royalty. "There she is, our star." I kept my head down, arranging silverware, trying to swallow the familiar sting. Dinner was lively at first. My aunt asked Claire about her art exhibitions. Mom bragged about Claire's friends. Dad talked about how creative she was. Then, inevitably, the conversation shifted. "So, Emily," my aunt asked kindly, "how's work?" "You're always so busy." I opened my mouth to answer, grateful for the chance to speak, finally, but Dad cut in with a chuckle. "Work? Oh, Emily's always working. She's the servant of the family. If you need something done, she'll do it." The table erupted in laughter. I froze. The fork slipped from my fingers, clattering against the plate. "Servant," I whispered. Claire smirked, swirling her wine. "Don't act surprised, Em. You've been our maid since we were kids. Might as well own the title." Mom nodded like it was a fact of nature. "You know we don't mean it harshly. But really, Emily, you're the dependable one. Claire shines, you serve. It's just how things are." My chest tightened. Heat rushed up my neck. I glanced around the table, praying someone, anyone, would step in. But they all just laughed. Even the cousins. Even the family friend. And in that moment, I felt stripped bare. I pushed my chair back, heart pounding. "I'm not your servant," I said, voice shaking. Dad's laughter boomed louder. "Relax, Emily, don't be so sensitive. You know your place. Your place." The words hit harder than any slap. Claire leaned across the table, eyes glinting with cruelty. "Face it, Em. You'll always be the helper, the backup, the one standing in the corner while I'm the star." "It's who you are." The room blurred. My breath caught in my throat, I wanted to scream, to flip the table, to shatter the plates into 1,000 pieces, but I couldn't move. I sat there humiliated as their laughter filled the room, each chuckle hammering me deeper into the role they had written for me. When I couldn't take it anymore, I stood abruptly. My chair scraped against the floor, silencing the laughter for a moment. "I'm leaving," I whispered, grabbing my bag. Mom rolled her eyes. "There she goes again. Always dramatic," Claire smirked, sipping her wine. "See? Even servants need their breaks." Laughter followed me out the door, echoing in my ears as I stumbled into the night air, my chest burning with rage and shame. I drove home in silence, headlights cutting through the dark. My hands shook on the wheel, tears streaming uncontrollably. Servant. Know your place. Servant. The words replayed like a cruel soundtrack. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I could barely breathe. I collapsed against the steering wheel, sobs racking my body. And for the first time, I wondered if maybe they were right. Maybe I was nothing more than the family's servant. But deep inside, buried under the humiliation, something else stirred. Because if they thought I would stay broken, they were about to learn just how dangerous a servant can become when she finally decides to fight back. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard their voices again. Servant. Know your place. Servant. I saw their faces, smirking, laughing, dismissing me like I was nothing more than a tool they sharpened and used. By morning, my pillow was soaked with tears, and I had never felt smaller in my life. The next few days blurred together. I called in sick to work, shut off my phone, ignored Maya's texts, and I sat in the dark of my living room, blinds drawn, food untouched on the counter. Shame clung to me like a second skin. Every corner of my house mocked me. The kitchen reminded me of meals I'd cooked for them. The laundry room reminded me of chores I'd done without thanks. The living room reminded me of holidays where I decorated while Claire basked in the spotlight. Even alone, I felt owned. Late at night, I'd sit on the floor of my bedroom, knees to my chest, replaying every moment from childhood to now. The time Mom told me, "You're the responsible one. Claire needs more freedom." The time Dad said, "Don't complain. Every family needs a helper." The time Claire laughed and called me her built-in maid. Each memory was another stone on my chest, crushing me. And the worst part? I started to believe them. Maybe I was just the servant. Maybe I would never be anything else. One night, I found myself curled up on the cold bathroom tile, staring at my reflection in the mirror across from me. My eyes were swollen, my face pale, my hair a tangled mess. I whispered to myself, voice shaking, "What do I even have if they've taken my dignity? If they've taken my family?" The reflection stared back, hollow. For the first time, I wondered if I'd wasted my entire life trying to earn respect from people who had no intention of giving it. But then, like a faint echo through the storm, I remembered something. My grandmother, she used to squeeze my hand in the kitchen during Sunday dinners, whispering, "They don't see you, baby, but I do. You're brighter than they'll ever admit." Her voice came back to me, steady, warm, undeniable. And for the first time in days, I felt something stir inside my chest. Not strength, not yet, but fire. I pulled myself up from the floor and stared into the mirror again. I still looked broken, but behind the tears, there was a glint, a flicker of defiance. "They want me to believe I'm their servant," I whispered, voice trembling but growing steadier with each word. "But I won't stay broken. Not anymore." The words felt foreign on my tongue, but powerful, because saying them out loud made them real. I stumbled into my office and pulled out the leather notebook I had abandoned weeks earlier. It was filled with plans, business strategies, notes from seminars, contact lists, dreams I had been too cautious to chase. I flipped through the pages, each scribble reminding me I was capable. I was intelligent. I was more than the role they had shoved me into. My fingers tightened around the pen. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about rewriting the story they'd written for me. And as I sat there in the dim light, pen poised above the page, one thought seared into me like fire. If they thought I was their servant, they were about to learn I was building an empire. Revenge doesn't start with a grand speech or dramatic fireworks. It starts in silence, pens scratching across paper, late nights lit by nothing but the glow of a laptop screen, whispered calls to people who believe in you when no one else does. That's where my revenge began. The first person I let back into my world was Maya. She showed up at my doorstep one evening, knocking until I finally opened the door. Her eyes softened when she saw me. "You look like hell." I feel like it," I admitted. She came inside, sat on the couch, and waited until I finally spilled everything. The dinner, the word servant, the laughter, the bathroom floor. When I finished, my voice cracked. "They think I'll always stay in my place." Maya's expression hardened, her tone fierce. "Then prove them wrong. Show them you're not the servant. They are the ones who'll bow." A week later, while scrolling through emails I'd ignored, I saw it. An invitation to apply for an executive role at a growing tech firm. Months earlier, I'd been approached by one of their recruiters. At the time, I hesitated. Too cautious. Too afraid to fail. But now the offer looked like something else. Not just a job. A weapon, I hit reply. "I'm ready. When can we talk?" The response came within the hour. "Tomorrow. Boardroom. Be prepared." That night, I transformed my living room into a war room. Notebooks stacked, sticky notes lining the walls, spreadsheets pulled up on my laptop. I poured every ounce of energy into preparing. Every time exhaustion clawed at me, I remembered my father's voice. "You know your place." Every time doubt whispered, I heard Claire's smirk. "You'll always be the servant." Each insult became fuel, sharpening my focus until my plan gleamed like a blade. Walking into that boardroom was like stepping into another world. Glass walls, leather chairs, a long table filled with executives and investors. The CEO stood smiling. "Emily Rogers, correct? We've heard good things." I took a deep breath and began. Slides, charts, projections. But more than numbers, I gave them vision. How I'd restructure operations, cut waste, and expand their reach. I spoke with clarity I didn't know I had until that moment. When I finished, silence hung in the air. Then one of the board members leaned forward, eyes sharp. "She doesn't just understand the numbers. She understands the power." The CEO smiled. "Exactly why we're offering you the role, Chief Operating Officer, effective immediately." My breath caught. Coup. Just one step from the CEO. I shook his hand steady. Inside, my chest blazed. That night, I called Maya, voice trembling with adrenaline. I did it. They gave me the position. She whooped so loudly I had to pull the phone from my ear. "Emily, this is it. This is your empire starting." I laughed for the first time in weeks. They called me their servant. Now, every decision I make will ripple through this city. They have no idea. Over the next few weeks, I worked in silence. I kept my head down publicly, pretending to remain the same dutiful Emily around my family, nodding when they barked orders, biting my tongue when Claire smirked. But behind the scenes, I was meeting investors, signing contracts, and slowly weaving a net of power that stretched further than they could see. And the best part? The very CEO my parents whispered about in fear, the one they resented for buying up properties and reshaping local businesses, was now my mentor. He looked at me across his desk one evening and said, "Emily, you've got fire. You've been underestimated for too long. Use that. Use them underestimating you to your advantage." And that's when I knew my trap was ready. Because the next time my parents and sister looked at me with smug smiles, thinking I was still their servant, I would drop the truth that would turn their world upside down. The thing about power is, it doesn't announce itself right away. It whispers first, slips into conversations, and makes people second-guess themselves. and I learned quickly how to use that whisper. One Sunday, I showed up to family dinner as if nothing had changed. I still carried dessert, still smiled politely, and let them treat me like the responsible one. But inside, I wasn't the same. Mom barked, "Emily, set the table." I looked her in the eye for a long moment before answering. "Actually, Claire can set it this time. I've been running operations for 300 employees all week. I think she can manage a few forks." The table went still. Claire sputtered, What did you just say?" I smiled sweetly. "You heard me." It was a small win, but the flicker of shock on their faces was enough to feed me for days. A week later, Claire bragged at lunch about touring condos. "Josh and I found one downtown, but apparently someone higher up already bought the building. Total nightmare." I stirred my coffee, hiding my grin, because what she didn't know was that the deal had crossed my desk 2 days earlier. My signature was on the approval. "Sounds rough," I said calmly. "Hope it works out." The bitterness in her tone was music. At the firm, my new role was already making waves. A regional investor pulled me aside after a meeting. "Emily, you're the backbone here. You've got instincts your rivals don't. I expect big things." Big things. Those words hit differently than servant. And that night, staring at my reflection, I whispered, "Not servant, boss." The word felt like armor sliding into place. It wasn't long before my parents noticed something was different. One afternoon, Dad asked for help balancing his accounts. Normally, I'd drop everything, spending hours fixing his mistakes while he pretended not to notice my effort. This time, I glanced at the papers, then shook my head. "I don't have time, Dad. Hire an accountant." He blinked, stunned. "But you've always—" "Not anymore," I said firmly. The look on his face, like the ground had shifted under him, was a victory I savored in silence. Maya noticed the change in me, too. One night over dinner, she smirked. "You're different, Em. Straighter spine." Sharper tone. "It suits you," I laughed. "Feels like I'm finally learning how to breathe without asking permission." She leaned closer, voice low. "This is just the beginning. Don't stop at small wins. Make them choke on the empire you've built." Her words lodged deep in my chest. Then came Claire's engagement party. My parents rented out a ballroom, invited everyone they knew, and dressed Claire up like a queen on parade. When I walked in, I could feel the stares. Whispers trailed behind me. I knew what they were thinking. That's the servant. The helper. The one who never shines. But what they didn't know was that half the investors in that room were now under my wing. When I shook hands with the CEO, they all whispered about the man my parents once claimed was too powerful, too dangerous. He looked straight at me and said loudly, "Good to see you, boss." The word rang out across the room. Conversations paused. Heads turned. My parents froze. For the first time, I wasn't the servant in their story. I was the headline. And as I stood there, watching their smiles falter, I realized something thrilling. These small cracks weren't enough. The time had come to bring the whole house crashing down. The night everything unraveled for my family was supposed to be Claire's crowning moment. Her engagement gala was held in the grandest ballroom in Dallas. Crystal chandeliers glittered overhead. Champagne flowed like water, and my parents strutted around as if they were royalty, basking in the glow of their queen daughter. And me? I walked in calm, measured. No frills, no dramatics, but with something far more dangerous than sequins or smiles. Truth. Claire floated across the room in a white gown with gold detailing, her fiancé at her side. My parents hovered near them, fawning over every word, every laugh, every gesture. As I stepped inside, whispers followed me. I could feel eyes on me, pitying, dismissive. That's the servant daughter. Always the helper. Always the shadow. I ignored them. Because tonight they were about to learn how wrong they were. Halfway through dinner, Dad stood with his glass raised high. His voice boomed across the ballroom. "Family and friends, thank you for joining us tonight to celebrate our Claire. She is our pride and joy, our shining star, the one who makes this family proud." Applause erupted. Mom added, smiling widely, Claire has always been our treasure. And Emily, well, she chuckled. She's always been the one behind the scenes. The one who makes things run. Every family needs a servant heart, right? Laughter rippled across the room. My blood ran cold. Claire smirked at me from across the table, lips curling into that familiar dagger. I stood slowly, glass in hand. My chair scraped against the marble floor, silencing the laughter. Actually, I said, my voice calm but cutting through the air, I'd like to make a toast, too. Eyes turned. The room hushed. I pulled a sleek folder from my bag and set it on the table, the embossed logo gleaming under the chandelier light. I'm proud to share that I've recently been named Chief Operating Officer of Rowe Industries. Gasps rippled. Murmurs spread like wildfire. Dad frowned. Rowe Industries? I nodded. The very company you've complained about for years. The CEO you fear because he keeps buying out properties and reshaping this city. The man you whisper about at dinner tables? He's not just my boss anymore. I opened the folder, sliding out the letterhead with my name and title printed in bold. He calls me boss. The room erupted. Some clapped. Some whispered. Phones came out, snapping photos, recording videos. Claire's face drained of color. Her fiancé shifted uncomfortably beside her. Dad's mouth opened and closed, words stuck in his throat. Mom's wine glass trembled in her hand. Finally, Claire hissed, "This is a stunt." "You're lying." I met her gaze, steady. "No, Claire. You lied. To yourself. To everyone. You told them I was a servant. But I'm the one signing contracts that decide who owns half the buildings in this city, including the one you were eyeing for your dream condo." Gasps again. People glanced at each other, whispers sharpening. Her fiancé paled. "Wait, what?" Claire stammered. "She's bluffing." I slid another document across the table, purchase agreement signed, sealed. My signature scrawled at the bottom, no bluff. "Just business," her fiancé excused himself abruptly, muttering about needing air. My parents sat frozen, their faces pale, their carefully curated image shattering in front of the very crowd they had hoped to impress. And I stood tall, savoring the silence that replaced their laughter. And then, as if fate itself wanted to drive the point home, the CEO himself walked into the ballroom. He shook my hand firmly, his voice carrying across the room. "Emily, good to see you here. Keep up the strong leadership, boss," the word echoed. Boss, the same word they had never allowed me to be. The same word that now defines me in front of everyone. And in that moment, standing beneath the chandeliers, I knew the tables had turned forever. But as sweet as that victory tasted, I also knew the fallout was only just beginning. The night of Claire's gala became the story of the season in Dallas. Not because of her engagement, not because of the decor or the dress, but because of me. By morning, videos from the party were all over social media. Clips of me sliding the documents across the table. The CEO shook my hand and said the word boss. The captions were ruthless. The servant isn't a servant anymore. Golden child dethroned. For the first time in my life, strangers saw me for what I was, not the helper, not the shadow, but the woman who had flipped the script. Claire tried to fight it. She posted photos of herself smiling in her gown, captions about haters and jealous sisters. But the comments didn't play along this time. "Didn't your sister just outshine you at your own party? Funny how you call her a servant, but she's signing contracts while you post selfies." And then came the final blow. Josh, her fiancé, broke off the engagement. Maya called me, her voice practically vibrating with shock. He couldn't handle the drama. Said he didn't want to marry someone who thought the world revolved around her. He's gone. I sat in silence, processing. I had wanted revenge, yes, but I hadn't expected it to unravel her life so completely. As for my parents, they retreated into silence. No calls. No texts. No attempts to spin the story. Through mutual friends, I heard they were embarrassed, mortified, keeping a low profile. The family that once mocked me loudly now had no voice at all. At first, I thought I'd feel triumphant. But mostly I felt hollow. Because for all the power I had gained, the truth remained. They would never see me as enough. Not because I wasn't, but because they chose not to. One evening, I sat in my living room sipping tea, staring at the walls of my home, the house I had fought so hard to keep. It wasn't just brick and mortar anymore. It was proof. Proof that I had built something on my own, without them, despite them. And yet, my chest ached with a strange grief. I whispered into the empty room, "Why wasn't I ever enough?" The silence answered me back, but then I remembered my grandmother's voice. "They don't see you, baby." But I do, and slowly I realized it was never about them seeing me. It was about me finally seeing myself. That week, I met Maya for lunch. She leaned across the table, eyes sharp. "Don't let their silence confuse you. This isn't about their shame. This is about your freedom." I exhaled slowly. I guess I wanted them to admit they were wrong. She squeezed my hand. They already did without saying a word. Their silence is the loudest confession they'll ever make. That night, I walked through my house again. This time, instead of hearing echoes of their insults, I heard my own steps, steady and sure. For the first time, the space felt fully mine, not tainted by their voices, not overshadowed by their demands, just mine. And as I stood at my window, city lights flickering beyond, I knew the final step wasn't revenge anymore. It was a resolution, letting go of their voices and finally, fully, stepping into my own. The weeks after the gala were the quietest of my life. No calls from my parents. No messages from Claire. Not even the backhanded check-ins I used to dread. The house was silent. My phone was still. And for once, I didn't feel the urge to chase after their voices, because I had finally learned something powerful. Silence can be peace. One afternoon, Claire showed up at my door. No designer dress, no entourage of attention. Just her, eyes swollen, makeup smudged, shoulders heavy. She stood there, shifting uncomfortably. "Josh left. Everyone's talking. I don't know what to do." Her voice cracked, and for the first time I didn't see my golden child sister. I saw a woman stripped of the pedestal my parents had built for her. I let her in. She sat at my kitchen table, staring at her hands. "I didn't think it mattered," she whispered. "Calling you that, laughing. I thought you'd always just—" "Take it?" I studied her, my chest tightening. Part of me wanted to lash out, to remind her of every cruel smirk, every word that cut me down. But instead I said quietly, "You did what they taught you to do. But I'm not their servant anymore. And neither are you. If you want to stand, you'll have to stand on your own." She nodded, tears spilling, but said nothing more. My parents never came. Not once. Maybe they were too proud. Maybe too ashamed. Or maybe deep down, they didn't want a daughter who refused to play the role they had written for her. And that was okay. Because I had finally stopped auditioning for their approval. One evening, I walked through my house again, the place they had mocked, the place they once suggested I'd only ever hold for Claire. I touched the walls, the counters, the doorknobs. Every surface was mine, paid for with my work, kept with my determination. It wasn't just a house anymore. It was proof. Proof that I had been enough all along. Revenge had felt good in the moment, the look on their faces, the whispers in that ballroom, the CEO calling me boss in front of everyone. It was justice. But the real victory wasn't the revenge. It was the resolution that followed, the knowledge that I never needed their validation. That my worth was never tied to their laughter. That my voice, steady and strong, was the only one that mattered. Now, when I sit on my porch at night, tea in hand, the Texas air humming with cicadas, I don't hear their voices anymore. I hear mine, steady, clear, not a servant, never servant, boss. If this story touched you, please like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Tell me, if the people closest to you called you less than you are, would you fight back or finally walk away? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear them. Because sometimes, The sweetest revenge isn't shouting louder, it's living so fully, so unapologetically, that the people who doubted you can't recognize you anymore.